Hello and welcome to the Rotary Club of LaGrange on Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation to be given by John Harrell. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Lord, I recently heard one of your wise ministers say that you can judge a person by his checkbook stubs. As Rotarians, we are generally blessed with lives of relative luxury, of opportunities unknown to many. Help us to review our checkbooks and indeed the registers of our lives with honesty as we consider our priorities and our opportunities to help others. Open our hearts and our accounts to those in need while providing us with appropriate fruits of our labors. Help us to share not only our tangible wealth, but also our intangible riches of knowledge, leadership, and creativity, and our precious time, so we can make our city, our nation, and the world a better place filled with peace and love. Amen.
Thank you, John. Birthdays and anniversaries. We have three with a birthday today. Michelle Bedingfield, Dante Lane, and Carrie Bott. Although I think Carrie's the only one here, so maybe we should sing. Maybe later. And then Ken Boatwright has a birthday on Saturday. Club anniversaries. Brandon Ely was 5 years yesterday, and Orrin Trotter 22 years yesterday. Wedding anniversaries, let's see who come in. Kathy Hal Tilley are 22 years yesterday. Or no, yes, 36 years yesterday. Yeah, 36 years. I get those wrong a lot. That was even worse than Savannah. Anyway, announcements. Next week we'll have a board meeting. The annual banquet, as you have been told 100 times, is June 15th, Thursday evening. And so no Wednesday meeting the day before the 14th. And we did this last week with Mike Wilson, but this week we have one for Ted Beeson, who has contributed $1,500 to the Walter Y. Murphy Scholarship Fund as part of our campaign on our 100th year to up that endowment. It's a 1923 Silver Peace Dollar and a 2023 Silver Eagle. And some may say, why are they doing this? And I think it's just because the blue box is so soft and smooth. Or it could be because it's just a great way to help young people go to LaGrange College, which, as we know and have seen many years and years and years, that's a wonderful thing to do and a great thing to continue doing for the community. So Ted? Thank you for that. That's a good looking piece, dollar. So that means there's only 31 others of those that exist in the world today to be given out. So go ahead and make your contribution. Trey tells me it's a great year to bunch your charitable contributions to get over the standard deduction. So if you were interested in saving taxes, this is the best year, I think, ever, right, Trey, to do that. So that's straight from Trey. Okay, we have time for happy dollars. If anybody's happy and has a dollar, come on up.
I had $2 in my pocket, but I only have one thing to say. But so the City Business Schools is growing again. I have 8 open positions right now. We're moving into 2 of them are because of promotions. One person's leaving, but I'm going into 4 new schools. We applied for some money that came in to the national office. So CIC Georgia was awarded an additional $1.9 million. So I asked for it. So we're going to move into Ethic Heights. So if you know anyone's looking for a job, I have 8 positions One's part-time as a volunteer coordinator, but I need 7 new site coordinators. So we're excited about that.
So it's graduation time of year, and I just wanted to take a minute and recognize how fortunate we are to have such an asset in LaGrange College. And I went to their graduation this past weekend, and got to hear our buddy Jim Thornton give the commencement speech, which was really nice. But just again, reminded, it's a big deal to graduate college. It's something we always assume these days, and you think of LaGrange College, private liberal arts, rich kids. That is not their demographic. I think maybe 40% of the kids are on Pell Grants, and, very diverse, and a lot of first-generation college students. So just remind me how lucky we are to have LaGrange College.
Hello, I want to tell you guys about Winnie the Pooh this weekend. Lafayette Theater Academy at LSPA is having a production directed by Carol Kane, and we have lots of other talented people working with her as well. But it's Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night at 7, and then also 2 o'clock on Saturday. So of course, it's for the whole family. You'll get to see 32 little actors doing their very best on stage, working with some puppets. We have a professional puppeteer working with kids and doing a lot of things as well. So we hope you're able to come out. Thanks.
$2 happy. Playing off of what Tripp said, a coworker of mine, Kiara Williams, who began an internship with me 3 years ago, has just finished her master's program and will begin at Tennessee State a PhD program. The other $1 is for my daughter, who just finished her 2nd trimester at Alabama President's List. Roll call.
Thank you. And George, you'll come up and introduce our program.
Thank you, President Ken. Dr. Richard Pryor, who does spell his last name P-R-I. He serves remarkably well as music director and conductor of the LaGrange Symphony Orchestra for the last 8 years. And since early 2022, also as minister of traditional worship at LaGrange First United Methodist Church. Beginning his music on the cello at age 10, he also began composing at age 11, a year at which Queen Elizabeth was present when one of his pieces was played. Richard's professional debut occurred at Westminster Abbey in 1988 with a piece entitled The Seventh Seal. That was the year he graduated in music and theology from the British University of Leeds. After that, he studied at University of Nottingham, earning a doctorate in composition and composing. In 1991, having gained much conducting experience during college and graduate school, he immigrated to the United States. In time to come, Dr. Pryor would conduct concerts with the Montreal Symphony, the National Orchestra of Ukraine, and Egypt's National Symphony in Cairo, and with many orchestras in this country. Before beginning in LaGrange in 2015, he would serve as conductor and music director of their college and university's orchestra while serving on the faculties of Davidson College and Oklahoma State University. He was conductor of the Southeastern Louisiana University Opera and the Rome, Georgia Symphony. A couple of years ago, he also added the orchestra in Auburn. As an educator, Richard would return to England to teach briefly at Oxford University in 1997. In 2014, he joined Emory University as professor of conducting, senior lecturer, and director of orchestral studies. In addition to all that, Richard Pryor is passionate about composing music, for which he is remarkably accomplished with numerous prize-winning works. His Stabat Mater, a composition for singers and orchestra, was nominated for Pulitzer Prize in 2001 and was broadcast by PBS in 2008. Earlier this year, he returned to Nottingham to direct his Stabat Mater again at his alma mater, all the while juggling multiple trips back and forth, so to speak, not without missing a beat in his LaGrange commitments to our orchestra and his music ministry at the Methodist Church. Today, we welcome Richard Pryor to speak to the Rotary Club of LaGrange.
Great pleasure to be back. Thank you for that warm welcome and for your introduction, George. Yes, I have to say, just sort of hearing that overview of my career and recent activity, it just makes me exhausted thinking about it. So, yes, the trip back to Nottingham, as an aside, was definitely an exciting one. It's probably amongst a spectrum of things that I've done that have been possibly questionable in terms of schedule. Probably one of the more hair-raising things. So I flew back for probably 36 hours. So I rehearsed the chancel choir on a Wednesday evening, flew out on a Wednesday evening, discovering at the airport that I had in fact picked up my 2-year-old son's passport, so that was an interesting moment, but did make the flight, and then arrived in England, rehearsed the choir and the orchestra for a little, and then flew back on Saturday morning to do the Sunday services at church. And then flew back to England the following week to actually do the performance, and then back in time for rehearsals and services. So yeah, that was quite the whirlwind tour. But always, the more that I sort of become attached to LaGrange, if that were at all possible, the more I realize just how incredibly culturally rich the town and the community is, for which I am immensely grateful. And it is quite remarkable when you think about the size of LaGrange as a community, if you then look at the amount of arts activity in general that is cultivated, present, supported by incredible institutions such as the Callaway Foundation. If you put that head count alongside a major city such as, I don't know, Chicago, for instance, it's completely out of proportion. And one of the great examples I always think of is our Strings in Schools program, where we have over 350 students in schools here engaged with that program. I'm looking at Raylene for confirmation. Almost 400. Yes, it's certainly over the past 8 years I've learned it's always best to look at Raylene for confirmation of anything I say. So 350 or nearly 400 students. If you put that alongside the number of students, for instance, in Chicago who are involved in similar programs, we have significantly more by percentage. So what is actually being delivered to those students by that program is absolutely worthy of national attention, and we'll continue to work on that. But this should be the model for so many other communities in terms of that engagement that is powered and supported, obviously, by the LaGrange Symphony, the board of the LaGrange Symphony, and many others who come into play. So I'm always just so profoundly struck by that. Obviously, also, it's not just the symphony, however, because we have the wonderful organization of LSPA. So you've got all of the essential components for sort of a comprehensive and live ecosystem of arts there with dance and theatre and music that is such an important part to this community for sure, and sort of touches so many different communities and touches pretty much all of the arts within that spectrum. And so I'm constantly grateful for their presence as artistic partners in the city. We've also, of course, got some churches in LaGrange, as I've discovered. And they too obviously fulfill not just a really rich, deep spiritual function in terms of community intersection, but those two also present many arts programs. And I would call out, for instance, the new performing arts series at First Presbyterian under the direction of Andrew Harry, who of course in his own right is a remarkable figure in our musical community. So that concert series, if you have not been to that yet, in that wonderfully sort of acoustic space of First Presbyterian, is well worth visiting there. They also have a very fancy new piano, which I am very jealous of. Andrew needs to keep an eye on that. So yes, then of course we have great institutions such as the Choral Society of West Georgia, which Andrew has just taken over from the remarkable Betty Biggs, who remains as artistic director there. So just an incredible forum for the presenting of all kinds of choral music, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the context of the Symphonies season for next year. We also, of course, have not just the orchestra, but the LaGrange Community Band, who fulfill yet another function within the community as well. There are many others that I could mention, but those are just sort of some of the jewels, I think, in the crown of the performing arts present in LaGrange. Of course, crowns are very much on my mind, having been forced to watch the coronation twice by my wife. So still turns out the same way. Anyway, so a glorious occasion, of course. I'll mention also sort of in the choral realm, some of you may be aware of the 8-voice choral group Stellarum, which launched earlier this year. I got to be a founding member of that group alongside a couple of colleagues in First Methodist and also several other choirs from the area. If you've not caught that, that's a really wonderful kind of choral experience. If you come across Botch's 8, for instance, the English choral group, 1 voice per part, totally different sound to kind of the sort of rather arguably fuller, robust sound of the Choral Society. But we saw a niche there. There aren't very many niches left in LaGrange for these groups, but it was wonderful to kind of add that into the spectrum of groups that are available. But again, if you go to Atlanta, there isn't that group. Nothing quite like that exists, or in Columbus. And so it's wonderful to be able to claim LaGrange as our launch point for that particular ensemble. It's easy to take these things for granted because you see the flyers, you see the mailings, and we forget that all of those things are just such an amazing cultural asset in the town, and other things are drawn to that. So to me, LaGrange has always been this extraordinary hub of activity. And some of you will know this story, but when I first came to LaGrange, it was at the invitation of Pat Kobos, my immediate predecessor with the symphony. And he said, "Oh, can you come and cover this concert for me? Because I'm just off somewhere." I can't remember where he was going, probably Chile. And I said, "Sure." And I knew Pat because I had judged with him in the past. And of course I thought, well, what's LaGrange? What's that? So I drove down, and you never know what you're walking into in these situations with smaller regional orchestras. And the program that had been picked out, I think by George, was very demanding. It was a lot of some of the big film music scores, and those things are super hard. I mean, those are much harder than some of the things in what we think of as the classical canon. So technically, to put together, it was like, there is no way I can get this together, but we'll just have a go. So I stood in front of them and gave the first downbeat and was almost literally blown away. It's like, wow, they can actually really play this. And I mean, not just sort of, they've really got something here. And I spent the next 6 hours just being sort of marveling at what had been brought and cultivated in that orchestra. And then, of course, lo and behold, a few months later, I was privileged enough to be able to come back and then was successful in my candidacy for music director and conductor. So, and that was 8 years ago. But it really is an extraordinary example of the talent that resides in and can be brought to LaGrange. It's also a statement about you as a community, because if you didn't want those things in this amazing array of performing arts vehicles, then they wouldn't exist, because there wouldn't be the support, there wouldn't be the funding, there wouldn't be the interest. So it's a remarkable commentary on the value, the cultural value that the community puts on these things. So again, always profoundly grateful for those aspects. So let me talk just a little bit about next year for the symphony, so I can give you a little bit of show and tell and reveal here about next year's season. And when I'm done with that, I'll leave a little bit of space for any questions that you might have, like, what was that whole deal with the sword carrying thing? Happy to answer that. And then, of course, some closing remarks from Ken. So we have 5 concerts for you next year, kind of distributed throughout the season. So we're going to open with another big film music score concert. So there's no end of great scores that have been written right from about the 1920s or 30s, right through to obviously the current group of John Williams type scores. Film scores are really remarkable because they sort of get under our skin in a slightly different way to what we think of as just classical music, because they're married to that visual image and they're married to that dramatic canvas where we know what the characters are doing, we know kind of the basic sort of theatrical landscape. And we also, of course, identify with movies from a generational aspect as well. So there's always that romantic return to movies that we fell in love with when we were young, or when we were first together with our spouse, or whatever it might be. They become special sort of cardinal points in our experience, and the music is such a deeply intertwined component of that. I think that's one reason why film scores have become such a good and legitimate part of professional symphony programming in this day and age. So we're going to delve into, inevitably, some pieces by John Williams, including things from, for instance, Jurassic Park and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Obviously, Harrison Ford is never going to let that role go, so that's going to be with us for quite some time. Some of the secret agent themes, so Mission Impossible, for instance. Who's good on their Morse code? Anybody good on their Morse code in here? I see many heads being buried in hands. I used to know that. Okay, so if you think of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, there's that theme at the very beginning that everybody knows: da 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 da, short, 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 long. Well, some musicologists, because they don't have anything better to do, in my opinion, have theorized that that is Morse code for the letter V. So V for victory in sort of the Napoleonic struggles, and Beethoven was sending a clandestine message there. So Mission Impossible is also really cool, because if you think of that jazzy sort of rhythm and melody at the beginning, we have dum 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 dum. So we have short, short, long, long, short. Sorry, long, long, short, short, long, long, short, short, which is MI. Mission Impossible. Ah, see? All right, good. So we all learned something today. Okay, good. So there are all kinds of interesting things going on in the music at that level that you'll get to sort of hear about and hear live, of course, in that performance. So we do that. And then we've got Adventures in Space and Worlds of Magic. So the theme from Star Wars, inevitably, possibly something from Holst's The Planets, because of course that actually provided much of the material that John Williams kind of tapped into. So if you listen to Holst's Planet Suite, you'll hear an awful lot of some of the Star Wars scoring in there and similar kind of ideas. You only kind of borrow from the best in the film music world. So we'll include that, Star Trek, and some of the Harry Potter scores as well. So it's a wonderful way to open the season. Very hard stuff for sure, but very dramatic. So then we go into our second classics concert, which we are calling Passports, Please, because music can also remind us of all kinds of different countries and cultures that we can travel to without even having to leave Callaway Auditorium. Always very good. So we've got music from, or with a Latin American flavor, the Marquez Dance on Number 2, which is kind of very jazzy, very upbeat. Music from France, Eric Satie, one of the Gymnopédie, and if you don't know it, you do, because it's been used in absolutely everything, commercials, films, you know it, you'll love it, trust me, just come. And Sibelius, the Corelia Suite, very famous there, you'll recognize that. And then finally, the Vaughan Williams A London Symphony, which is a large-scale work that actually paints in music pictures of London scenes. And so it's a great way for this kind of round world travel and get a sense of all of those things just live on the stage. In December, we will combine our fabulous youth orchestra under the direction of my colleague Michael Giel with some of the symphony, the adult orchestra winds, so that the strings actually get the opportunity to play with the winds, and that's a major educational opportunity for them, because they're normally, even in high schools, even great high school orchestras tend to be just string ensembles because the winds are far too busy playing in marching bands. And so this is a great opportunity for our students in our youth symphony to actually get to play some of the pieces that require winds and also learn about those sounds as they're going on. So that's also a very kind of unique offering that we're able to give that I'm very, very happy with. And then we move into the spring 2024. We'll do our side-by-side with the youth orchestra there, and also have the winner from our Young Artists competition. So we're actually able to feature two winners this season. If you came, you would have heard the wonderful saxophone concerto, and then also one of the violinists out of Sergio Schwartz's studio at Columbus play a movement of the Korngold violin concerto. So we're actually offering really great sort of pre-professional as well as educational opportunities just by virtue of our programming, which I think is also a very laudable and unique thing. I'll come back to that concert in a second. But our final concert is sort of a bookend to the evening. So we've had film music at the beginning, yes. So we're going to bookend it with a collaboration with our wonderful friends in the Choral Society of West Georgia. And we're going to do a whole range of musical theatre selections. So we start with movie music and film, and then we'll go to the other end of the season with selections, and we're hoping from things like South Pacific, West Side Story perhaps, The Music Man, Sunday in the Park with George. So it's a really great way of uniting those two groups on the stage. So why, you say, should we come to this? Couldn't we just pull this up on YouTube because it's there and it's free and we wouldn't have to move out of the armchair? That would be great. So I would suggest to you that obviously one of the most important things in live performance is that human connection and that human experience there. So when you come to the symphony, you don't come to hear musicians sort of play, for instance, Beethoven 5. You come to see and witness 65 musicians spontaneously create that in front of you. And there is no replacement for that. It doesn't matter how good your sound system is, whether it was 8-track, digital, vinyl, doesn't matter. It's not the same. And so that kind of human connectivity, I think, is one of the things that is a great challenge for us as a society right now. And we're still suffering from this post-COVID, just from the point of view that we did so much online. We went to church online, we got our entertainment online. If you listen to my 17-year-old son, got our education online for a year and a half, which I don't think happened. But so those were all of those kind of experiences that distanced us from that interaction and the joy of that live experience. And so again, I would very much encourage anybody I talk to make that effort. It's, the concerts are an hour and a half, maybe, so it's not quite as long as a lot of the movies that we plonk ourselves down in front of. It's not as long as the dinner that we went to or the lunch that we might be sitting through now. It's such a tiny investment of time for such an incredibly rich reward. And so, if you're already a ticket holder or you already attend, wonderful, thank you. Now bring 5 of your friends who haven't, because they need to experience this as well. So this is a little bit of evangelism. So I'll finish my remarks, leave again a little time for questions. I want to tell you about a special piece that we're going to have on that March program that also includes the side-by-side with our youth symphony. So it was several years ago that I think it was George suggested, why don't you play the Florence Price Symphony No. 3? It's a wonderful work, he said. I said, I don't know the Florence Price Symphony No. 3. Do you guys know the Florence Price Symphony No. 3? Okay, so let me tell you. So Florence Price was one of the first, if not the first, African-American women composers who in the 1930s was composing symphonic music, and she got this piece premiered by the Chicago Symphony in the 30s. It's a huge deal historically. It's wonderful music. And we played this piece and it was great. And I think we should have done, universally, me included, a better job in sort of telling our story that we were doing this, because about 2 years later and continuing to this day, every orchestra under the sun is playing the Florence Price Symphony No. 3, recording it, broadcasting it. We were so early in sort of the rediscovery and celebration of that piece. So I thank you, George, for that wonderful recommendation. Trying to not miss the boat again, in March, we are going to play the William Dawson Negro Folk Symphony. Okay, so William Dawson was born in Anniston, Alabama in 1899 and actually died in 1919. So a very celebrated and successful African-American composer. He wrote this symphony in 1934, so it was around the same time actually as Florence Price. And it too received great premieres, including with the Philadelphia Orchestra. And then the piece sort of disappeared for about 20 years. He revised it and added all kinds of really cool drumming rhythms that he sort of discovered on a trip to West Africa. So it's got this really amazing energy to it as a piece, as it goes through the 3 movements that are kind of really reflections on African-American spirituals. And then it kind of dropped off the map again. And so it wasn't until 2023, I believe, where the Philadelphia Orchestra actually picked this piece back up and recorded it. And so now, of course, everybody's very excited about the rediscovery of this piece that should never have slipped off the radar in the first place. But we are programming this work in March. So arguably, yes, you could go to a number of regional symphonies or the Atlanta Symphony and hear Beethoven 5. That's great. I commend that. Please go and do that. Your opportunity, however, to hear this work in LaGrange, right on your doorstep, which is really an extraordinary piece that you're not going to hear probably for about another year, all over, is next March. So I would absolutely draw that work to your attention. Wonderful piece, if you don't know it. We'll be telling the story as we move into the season, more about William Dawson and that piece, but a real opportunity here to kind of deepen our own cultural awareness of this work. So super excited about that. Always very grateful to Raylene. Just check you, Raylene. Yes, I am very grateful to Raylene, so that's good. Always grateful to the board members and of course our wonderful patrons who make all of this possible, and of course for this opportunity to talk to you today. So happy to take any questions for a couple of minutes before I hand the mic back to Ken. Thank you.
I have more of a comment. We're awfully fortunate to have you in LaGrange. But another thing that the symphony does is the children's concert, usually in February, where we have is fifth graders or third graders from Troup County and surrounding counties come to Callaway Auditorium. Carol Kane usually MCs it, Richard directs it, and you can literally watch the kids' faces when we have music like this in LaGrange, and then they listen and it's like, oh, this music is fun, and they tune in, and it really is a great couple of days that we're fortunate.
And to add some metrics to that, how many third graders?
About 2,300.
2,300.
Every year, every year.
So yeah, it's
multiple
quite
concerts. Yeah, several concerts in the course of.
So 4 concerts in 2 days. So yeah, that's also a remarkable part of the activity. Anything from anybody? Super. I will. Oh, Bill, yes.
Will you tell us about how you arrived at the name of the octet?
Yes, by all means. So the vocal octet Stellarum. So James Camp, my wonderful friend and colleague at First Methodist, and the Camps I know are very well situated in LaGrange. He came up with that name. James is a huge fan of astronomy. And so Stellarum, it refers to sort of in Latin the brightest star in, and I'm trying to remember which particular constellation it is, but we are the brightest star of 7, and I kept saying that James, there are 8 in the group. I said, wow. So anyway, we needed a good name that we could sort of go to market with. So it's really based on that astronomical feature.
It's wonderful. People want to come here. You've had 2 concerts?
Yeah, we've had 2 concerts. We'll probably do no more than 2 or maximum 3 a year, just because of the preparation time. As you can imagine, when you're one voice on a part, you've really got to know what you're doing, because you can't hide behind 17 other people when you don't. So that's one of the reasons. We're also looking at maybe doing a tour or a residency, not this summer, but next summer in England, which will orchestrate. But yeah, it's quite something. The intimacy of that number of voices being kind of absolutely in sync most of the time is really quite something. Thank you, Bill, for that comment. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. And let me just reiterate again the importance of seeing something live, because I don't care how big your woofer is, unless you're there watching the basses dig in on that E string and make it growl, it's not the same. Also, come see 32 Little People act. You're not going to see that. No, it's not going to be the same on TV. And if you're at Sweet Land and one drum lick on one guitar lick, a sea of 50 and 60-year-olds magically turns into a bunch of beboppers. You're not going to see that on, You hear that on your headphones, so it's well worth the time and effort to go see something live. In honor and great appreciation of your speaking today, we're going to make a donation in your honor to Polio Plus, which is Rotary's initiative to eradicate polio worldwide. Come see our new members. Norma Burns is celebrating 1 week as a Rotarian. And we also have Kayla and Kim here. They're at our new members table right here. So if you haven't met them yet, come see them. Next week is Clay Bryant, who will be speaking, is the author, speaking on the Fred Wilkerson murder mystery. And then the next week is Whit Perry and his music and storytelling. So that'll be something live. Nothing else. We are adjourned.
Never mind, disregard. I handled everything.